Welcome to Leadership Live, and I have a question for you today. What is the return on investment of a great keynote at your leadership event? That's the question that I'm posing to you today, and that I want to spend some time talking about, the ROI of a great keynote. See, every executive that I have met over the last 25 years, whether I was in corporate or whether I was a paid speaker, I know the executive team cares about one thing, is that when they bring their leaders together for a leadership event, they want to make sure it is the most impactful use of their time of their day. See, most of these leadership events are not a 1-hour conversation. They build a whole day. They got breakouts, they got lunch, they got entertainment, they got social time together. They're making an investment in their team and their people. And when they make this investment, they want to make sure that there is an ROI, there is a return on that investment. But here's the one area sometimes that they miss. So they might have the best food that everybody's going to talk about the shrimp and grits for the next 2 weeks, or they're going to talk about the cheesecake dessert for the next month. They're going to talk about the live band that they had the night before, or the great classic hip hop DJ that they had that really set the event off. They're going to remember those things. But here's the question. Are they going to remember the keynote speaker? Are they going to remember what that speaker said? And more importantly, are they going to be able to implement the things that keynote speaker laid out in that presentation? See, the ROI on good food, on good entertainment, on great breakout sessions, those things are all cool. But the main point for me is, what is the ROI on that keynote speaker? See, if you don't have a great ROI on a keynote speaker, people are going to go back to their offices on Monday and forget everything that they heard on Friday. The momentum is not going to pick up. The turnover is still going to be high. The retention is still going to be low. The burnout is still going to be real for so many people. And your culture and your organization is not going to get better. So you got to be focused on, how do I make sure I get a return on investment for this event that I'm doing for my leaders? So now I want to tell you about Marcus. See, Marcus was the COO of a multi-state health system. Now, Marcus is not his real name, but I changed the names to protect the innocent, so to speak. But I want you to know that Marcus saw the data in his organization before his last Leadership Development Institute event. He saw the burnout numbers, and he was hearing it from the staff. He saw the number of people who were taking FMLA on a regular basis. He saw the turnover data. He also saw the employee engagement data. And he saw the fact that his team was frustrated, and there were more safety events than it ever had before. And Marcus knew that as the COO, that he really needed to reinvest in his team. So he took the one opportunity that he had some influence and control over as it relates to getting everybody at the same time. And that is, when they were planning their LDI, and again, in healthcare, that's called a Leadership Development Institute. They say LDI for short. That when Marcus was planning the LDI, he wanted to be intentional about the speaker that he picked. And he picked me. And I delivered what he needed at the LDI. And I remember hearing from Marcus 3 months after the LDI, where he said, Anton, people are still talking about what you said in your presentation. My managers are doing their 30-minute one-on-ones, like literally 3 months after I told them, if you're a leader, you should be doing 30-minute one-on-ones a week. And if you can't find 90 minutes in a week to do a one-on-one with people on your team, you don't deserve to lead. And he told me that his leaders were doing the work. And then 6 months later, the numbers were changing. The turnover was going down. The retention was going up. The people were feeling engaged. Even the HR team was refocusing on rewards and recognizing the employees. And they started to see a shift in their culture. That is what you call return on investment of a great keynote. But here's what I want to point out. You ain't Marcus. You didn't hire me, and you didn't hire a speaker who delivered ROI. So here's what happens when you don't do that. I already kind of said this. You do your event on Friday, and before the event is over, people are already yawning and thinking about all the stuff they got to do when they get back to the office on Monday. As a matter of fact, some of them resent being taken away from the office all day to come to a meeting to hear the same old speaker deliver the same old gravy just warmed over. That before the applause was over, they had forgotten the first teaching point in the presentation. And yes, the culture did not shift, the retention did not improve, the burnout stayed the same, and your team is still struggling. You can't afford that. You can't afford to take people away for a full day of doing their clinical duties in their work and not getting the ROI that you need and you deserve when you hire a keynote speaker. You can't afford to have the energy die. So what I'm going to do in the rest of this presentation, the rest of this video, is I'm going to tell you the 4 things you need to focus on as a leader if you want to ensure that you get ROI for your keynote. If you want a great ROI for bringing in a speaker to your leaders in your organization, I'm going to give you 4 things to do and 4 things to think about. But if you stick around to the end, I'm going to give you a tool that you can use to evaluate every speaker that you're considering to make sure that that speaker is the right fit. So stick around with me. So here's what I want to make sure that you understand. That a great keynote is going to deliver 4 things. These 4 things are going to be critically important to you as an organization. The first thing that a great keynote is going to deliver is alignment. See, when I say alignment, you want to make sure that whatever speaker you choose for your event, that they are aligned to you, your mission, and your needs as an organization. So if it's turnover, you need to make sure that they're aligned with being able to address turnover. If it's employee engagement, you want to make sure that they're aligned and can address that. If it's customer service or patient experience, you want to make sure it's aligned with that. So you want to make sure your keynote has alignment. The second thing you want to make sure your keynote has is that your keynote has motivation with muscle. So when I say motivation with muscle, here's what I want you to understand. That sometimes motivation is the most important thing your team needs. I firmly believe that motivation is like oxygen. We need it every day. But oxygen alone won't sustain transformation. You need muscle. And muscle is actionable strategies that people can use right away. And that's what fails a lot of times in organizations is that you'll get people all motivated and all hyped up and they feel good and feel inspired, but they leave the event not knowing what to do. And you can't afford to have an event where your leaders have spent a whole day learning, but don't know anything new to do to turn around the challenges that you brought them together to get alignment around. So you need motivation with muscle. The second thing, or the third thing really in that is very similar to motivation with muscle, is that you need leadership activation. Like everything rises and falls on leadership. I think you've heard me say that before. Actually, it's a great John Maxwell quote that says, everything rises and falls on leadership. So if your leaders are not willing to take action, then I want you to know your people are not going to take action. And so your leaders have to be activated. They have to be crystal clear of what's in their power, in their control, in their responsiveness in order to be able to deliver great content. Hey, Shauna Scott, good to see you on. So you got to make sure that your leaders are activated. You got to make sure your leaders are connected. You got to make sure your leaders are responding to the information that they heard. Because without leadership, you don't get no team action. You won't get organizational action. You don't get the things that you need that actually transform culture. Which takes me to the fourth thing that you should expect from a great keynote is that you want culture momentum. You want to know that you have defined the culture, that you define what's wrong with the culture and what you want to see right in the culture. And that momentum is catapulted at the end of that keynote presentation. So those are the four things that you want. You want alignment, you want motivational muscle, you want leadership activation, and you want culture momentum. Those are the four things. So how do you get that? How do you get those four things that when you bring in a speaker that you know you're getting those four things? Well, I'm going to tell you what you need to be doing, not the speaker. This is not the speaker's job. This is your job. Four things that you need to make sure of before you book a speaker. And again, I'm going to give you a document. It's a PDF document. You can download it right away. You don't even got to get on my list to get it. If you just click the link in the description, it's going to give you what I call my Keynote ROI planner. It's a planner for you to use to determine you're going to get your ROI. But let me tell you the four things of what you need to do. Is the first thing that you need to do is you need to decide. And what do I mean decide? What is your biggest challenge right now? I know turnover might be a challenge. I know retention might be a challenge. I know that leading through uncertainty might be a challenge. Finances might be a challenge. Budget might be a challenge. Like all of those things could be challenges at the same time. But you need to pick the one that is most important for you to make movement and momentum around. Pick the one challenge. See, because if you try to find a speaker that solves all challenges at the same time, there's no real catch-all, right? You won't get an expert who can help you to deliver. So if the challenge is around how to navigate tight finances, then you probably want a speaker who can be creative on how to manage finances in a healthcare environment. That ain't me. I can probably recommend some people that would be good, but that ain't me. But if your challenge is around culture, then you need to pick a speaker who knows culture. If it's around leadership development, you need to pick a speaker who knows leadership development. If it's around retention, you need to pick a speaker who knows retention. You got to be specific. So the first thing you got to do is you got to decide on your biggest challenge. Pick the challenge. Second thing you got to do is to make sure that whatever speaker you hire, that they understand your mission and that they are aligned with your mission. Here's what I mean. As a mission-driven organization, you know that this is not about the bottom line for you. This is about changing lives. So you want to make sure that you have a speaker who understands that the focus is on changing lives and not about bottom line revenue. See, there's plenty of people who get bottom line revenue. They know it's about shareholders and return on investment and blah, 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 all of those things, right? But if your mission is more important than your margin, then you need to make sure you have a speaker who understands that the mission is more important than the margin. Now, some people will say, well, Anton, if you ain't got no margin, you got no mission. I agree with that too. But you should never let the money become the motivator when the mission is what matters. Ooh, that was a bar right there. Don't let money be the motivator when it's the mission that matters. So you want to pick a speaker who understands the mission. Now, here's the third thing you want to do when you're thinking about who your next speaker is going to be. You want to make sure that you demand some post event action or post event activation. So, does this speaker have a book that every one of your leaders could buy and get something useful out of? Does this speaker have a workshop? Do they have a coaching program? Do they have some kind of training? Do they have a next step for you after the keynote speech? Because what you don't want is really a Lone Ranger. And if you know what the Lone Ranger is, if you remember that show, the Lone Ranger and Tonto would come into town, they would solve the problem and, do the shootout, and then they would ride off into the sunset, never to be seen again. So if the bad guys come back, you don't have them there. You can't call them. You can't find them. You want to make sure that there's some post-event activation, some post-event feedback, some post-event process that will help you with the next steps. So it could be a book, it could be a workshop, it could be a coaching program, it could be a training, it could be a video series, something that helps your people after that day of learning and leadership development is over, to keep the momentum going. That's the third thing. So you want some post-event action. And the fourth thing is that you want to make sure that you have transformation in this event over entertainment. Yes, I totally believe that having an entertaining and dynamic speaker is paramount in 2025. Nobody wants to be bored to death in a presentation. And the last thing you want to do is to bring your whole team together to be bored by a speaker. You don't want people on their phones and falling asleep. I talked to you about that last week. So you want to make sure that someone has entertainment value or educational value or enlightenment or inspirational value. You want that, but you want transformation more than anything else. So the speaker needs to be able to do both: entertain and transform, educate and transform, inspire and transform. So you want to have all of these things when you book your next speaker. That is how you make sure you get a great ROI from your keynote. So if you're looking for a keynote speaker and you want to find a way to get ROI, you can go to antongunn.com/blog, read my blog post on this, and there's a link in there for the ROI planner. Or you can just click the link in this description or in the comments below. I want to make sure you get this tool. I want to make sure it's valuable to you and it helps you to build a great event, because you can't afford to cut corners when you do your next event. You need to make sure that you are getting the best bang for your buck that really moves your organization forward. That's what we need in this time. So I want to thank you for watching this episode of Leadership Live. Stay tuned. I'm going to continue to add a little bit more value to help you to understand the value of the speaking industry, the value of great keynote speakers, and why when you're planning your next meeting that you need to be intentional in paying attention to the details about how to build a perfect experience for your leaders and your teams, and why I might be the right fit to help you to do that, or at least somebody who can help you to find the right fit. Everybody have a fantastic day. Take care.